Welcome to the Dream Show. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson, and this is episode 233. I don't think this has happened before, but our guest on the show today is called Jane. I'm sure we haven't had a Jane before. Maybe we have, but I'm sure I don't remember a Jane. Anyway, today, our guest on the Dream Show is Jane from Sebastopol in California. And as you'll hear, Jane has quite a long but really intriguing dream that includes a list of animals and conundrums and puzzles. And I think you're going to really enjoy it, particularly when we get down to really exploring the dream together and finding out how it relates to her life and what she can learn from it, what dream alchemy she can do. I think a lot of you will deeply relate to this dream as well. Just before we go there, because we've just finished recording it and I'm adding this bit at the beginning. For those of you who haven't listened to the Dream Show before, the idea is that when you're a guest on the Dream Show, I know nothing at all about your dream before we hit the record button. So as the dreamer's telling their dream, as Jane was, I'm this end, I'm actually taking notes at high speed, writing it down so I can refer back to it. And then what you're hearing is me and how I approach a dream with a person the first time. So there's nothing known beforehand. And people tell me that that's what they like. They enjoy that sense of exploring it with me from the outset. So that's what you're going to get. Just before we do go there, a reminder of my websites. If you haven't been there for a while, they're always changing. There's janeteresa.com. That's Teresa without an H. And that's where you can go for lots of blogs, to buy my books or find out about my books, paperbacks and ebooks, to find out about my courses, to find out about my services, my email services, my phone services, my Zoom services, helping you individually and confidentially with your own dreams. And then there's the learning platform, the Dream Academy, and the address for that is dream-academy-online.com, where you can go to learn how to interpret your own dreams step by step and do other courses all the way up to becoming a dream therapist, a professional dream therapy course. And of course, you can find me on social media as well. But let's get on with our conversation with Jane and her dream. Welcome to the Dream Show, Jane.
Hi.
We haven't had a Jane on the show before. It's nice to do Jane to Jane.
Oh, my goodness. So exciting.
Jane, you're from Sebastopol in California, and I think you've lived there most of your life.
Yes.
So, and you've got, I know you've also said you've got a dream written down and all ready for us. So I'm ready for you. Let's go.
Okay. So I had this dream 2 weeks after I discovered your podcast, and so I had this in July of this year, on July 19th. So the first image I remember is of my neighbors, Stephanie and Mark. They're a couple. They were having a rat problem. They were standing in a field near a very big pile of dirt that had been upturned by rats. One of them, I think it was Mark, was holding a farming tool, either a shovel or a rake. The rats were coming out of the hole in the ground, and they were climbing on top of each other. It was kind of, I describe it as if it's how ravioli cooks in boiling water. How it rises to the surface. Like, it seemed like they obviously weren't in water, but it felt like they were kind of bubbling up.
Yes.
And I decided, I thought the word there was maybe like a rolling boil. So they seemed quite at ease. And I knew that they wanted to keep one of the rats. Even though they were attempting to get rid of the nest of rats. Their demeanor reminded me of that, when I was reflecting, their demeanor reminded me of that very famous American painting where there's a farmer and his wife standing next to each other in front of an old farmhouse. Mm-hmm. I think it's from the 1930s. And they both have just very calm look on their faces, and for some reason that became very popular here. So
Yes.
I think the farmer is holding a pitchfork. And like I said, one of them was holding a farm tool.
Yeah.
So it was very calm. And I watched the scene unfold from the other side of a barbed wire fence. So it was, it's a typical ranch-style fence. I live in the countryside, so I'm surrounded by cattle ranches and sheep ranches, and it's something that is familiar to me. And so, but it was very open, so there were just 3 strands of barbed wire. And I knew there were 2 wild animals present, and I can't remember what the first one was, but the second one was a black bear, and the bear was on my side of the fence and was walking toward me on all 4 legs. And I was surprised, but I wasn't scared. Now completely shift scenes, and now I am shopping at a women's dress store, and I don't know if you're familiar with these stores, but they're called Anthropology. They're like a chain here in the U.S.
Yes.
And it's very dark and somewhat chaotic, I wrote. It seems like the store is actually outside, surrounded by woods or a kind of tropical rainforest. I couldn't decide. The trees are very tall, and they're blocking all the light. There might be lights in the store, but they're not bright. So it's quite a dark scene. And it feels chaotic because the racks are placed in very haphazard ways, and they're overstuffed. There are a lot of people there, and it feels like there are very few employees to keep things tidy. So it's kind of like a store in the midst of a sale, let's say.
Yes.
I have on a previous trip, I have tried on a dress, and I'm going back to try it on again. I get in a very long line for the dressing rooms, and I'm in line, but I realize I don't have the dress. Fortunately, the lady standing in front of me happens to be holding the same dress, and she takes it into the dressing room along with a handful of other items. And as I see her, and she takes some time in the dressing room, but I'm still in line. As I see her exit the dressing room, she puts the dress back on a rack in the dressing room, in the larger dressing room, rather than the bigger store, and she kind of puts it toward the back as if she's coming back for it later, kind of tucking it away.
Yeah.
And I take it off the rack, and in doing so, I lose my place in line, and without thinking one way or another, I slip it on over my clothes, and I either buy it or I leave with it. So, and I have no qualms with that, so there's nothing. Now we're in the next scene. I'm at a house. It's an unfamiliar house, but if in this unfamiliar house, it's as if my real house and my real next door neighbor's house are somehow joined. So there's some blending, let's say. I am sharing this unfamiliar house with a bunch of people, and they're my college roommates, but they're not my true college roommates. They're quote-unquote college roommates.
Yeah.
There is a party, and it gets out of control. It's quite large, and I remember 3 people there that I knew in high school. Paula, John, and Terry. During the party, things get disheveled and some windows get broken. My college roommates get very mad at me and want to blame me for the party and the broken windows. I did feel like I had drunk too much, and we make a Herculean effort to finally get everyone to leave. And that took quite a while. And that part felt a little chaotic. So now my mom comes in and tells me that she couldn't find a place to park, that all the people were leaving. We live at the very end, not in the Dream, we live at the very end of a long driveway, and she couldn't find a place to park, so she had to walk down the long driveway. And I was surprised to see her there because I didn't think I was, quote unquote, at home. I thought I was at my college home. And that was just very brief. And in real life, she is my next door neighbor. So there's a lot of neighbors going on.
Yes, there are, yes.
Yes. So after making everyone leave the party, my roommates are blaming me again. Everything was my fault. Why did I have the party? Why didn't I shut it down early enough? I was mean to somebody, which they told me I said something mean, but I couldn't even remember it. I felt like everyone was blaming me, but I'm so tired. I just say, okay, let's just talk about it tomorrow. I'm just so tired. I have to go to bed. So I go to my bed, which is in the living room. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing about my roommates is throughout all the blaming and the party and the harassment, kind of, I don't know, they're not really roommates. They're kind of, I don't see people. They're just almost like disembodied voices. Mm. Okay. So one of the roommates, quote unquote, which it doesn't feel like a person, but more like a presence, walks with me toward my bed, which is in the middle of the living room, and shows me that there's a curtain on the wall behind the bed. Now, this is to me, the most interesting part. The curtain hangs behind the head of the bed where a headboard might be, but the curtains come down just to the level of the mattress. So my roommate lifts the curtain and shows me a bee colony that is under glass. Mm-hmm. So there's an alcove with a shelf that is also at the level of the bed, and the living bee colony is in this kind of shadow box. I ended up looking up the word because I was like, it's like a display case that you see at a museum, and they have insects in it, and blah, blah, blah. And basically, I think the word is shadow box.
Yes.
So that is right behind the bed, right at the head of the bed. And I know, and I don't know how I know, but I know that it is in the exact same spot that the rat nest had been earlier in the dream, even though that couldn't be possible because now we're inside of a house, and we're not in a field, and these are bees, and they're not rats. But I wanted to get this time I was scared. I wanted to get away. So I asked one of my roommates if I could share his bed because I'm still just so tired. And I did say share his bed rather than share his room. And at this point, I realized I do see the roommate one of the roommates for the first time, and he's a young man, so he's about college age. And he says, "Yeah," like in a very casual way. And we walk into his bedroom, which is just off the living room, and there is a king-size waterbed that is heated. I know that because I touched the bed and it feels hot. I realized instantly that I hope I'm not giving him like a message that I want to be sexual with him, because I don't.
Yeah.
So suddenly I see in the room, suddenly another bed appears in the room. And I say, I'd rather sleep here. And he says, of course, that's fine. It happens to be the mattress topper to the waterbed, and it's folded up into 3 and made up into a single bed. And I'm about to get in, and I have to get up again. So we go back into the living room, and I'm being blamed again. They're telling me about the windows, and now they're telling me they found a 3rd window that's broken. And I'm standing in front of the 3rd window, and I realize that we're living in an old house, and all the windows are not good anyway. Like, I kind of am doubting now whether the windows actually got broken during the party anyway. So this one window, instead of being cracked, it kind of had just like a strip of the side that was missing. Just no window there.
Yeah.
At this point, I discover a whole nother wing of the house, and I go down a hallway, and I go to a room at the end of the hallway, and I see my stepsisters are sitting in a window seat. Now, I had just heard from one of them that one of my stepsisters had died a couple weeks before this dream.
Yeah.
But in the dream, they're together. And behind them is another window looking out at beautiful rolling country hills. I need to use the bathroom, and one of the sisters says there's a tiny bathroom in their bedroom. So I go in, and a little boy scampers out. And it's a little boy that I used to know when my 26-year-old was maybe 7 years old. So he's probably about 7. And after I come back out into the room, then the sister who has died recently is no longer there, and I'm comforting the other sister. That ends. I go back into the main house, and my dogs are barking. I have 2 small dogs in real life. I go outside to see what is happening, and a tall lady is striding up the hillside with 2 huge dogs. She's a mindfulness teacher that I have studied with.
Yeah.
I was scared for my dogs, so I called to them, and they came right away, which was a miracle, I said. I put them in the house in a different bedroom, in another bedroom. I went back outside, and I was talking with Jill. And as we were speaking, I saw a garden that had been started under and around a table. The garden was simply seeds that had been placed in the ground in a geometric pattern on all 4 sides of the table. I said the pattern reminded me of Chinese checkers, the game, but there were no triangles or circles. It was just a pattern. I ended up later thinking it could have been a little bit like a bee.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So after Jill left, I went back inside and got my dogs out of the bedroom. There was a couple in there. Then I went back to the first bedroom where I was going to sleep in the single bed, and the young man, had someone in there with him now. And I noticed that bed, the king-size bed, was now on a different wall in the bedroom, but the single bed was still in the same place. But I didn't go there.
Yeah.
That's the end of the dream.
Yeah.
I knew I didn't want to go in there while they were in there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said the feeling at the end of the dream was that this whole new phase, which by new I meant this college roommate phase, I don't want it. It's too chaotic. I'd rather go back home and have it be more calm and boring. I don't want to be blamed and feel like things are out of control and broken and that they have to get fixed.
Yes.
Throughout the dream, I kept saying to the roommates, I'll fix everything, I'll fix it. But I knew that I wouldn't be able to. I kept saying, I'm going to do it, even though I had a sense that I had no idea how to do it.
Yeah. Wow, amazing recall.
The last thing is that I noticed that the house, and by the end of it, it's sort of like a house got built. And the house had two wings, again, like a bee.
Like a bee, yeah.
The wings of the house made the house feel so much bigger by the end of the dream, but the wings were separate. So, like, the living room was in between the two separate wings, quote unquote.
Yes, yeah.
So that's it.
That's fantastic.
I know
recall.
I know it's very long.
Yeah, it's long, but it moves. It's got a flow, and it's got some recurring themes throughout it, which develop as it goes through. So that's kind of like the way to approach this one. And
right.
You did a lot of the work there, as you say, in summarising the dream down to its essence. The fact that I don't want to be in that current phase of the college mate kind of thing. I don't want to be blamed.
Right.
I don't want to be fixing things. I want to be back in my home, in control, even though I've got a sense that it's maybe calm and boring, and yet there's also the sense that throughout this dream something has changed, something has shifted, something has been built, the house, it's got two wings, it's got extra potential in it. So you summed up that bit, which was really good. One of the things that I saw, and you probably saw, Jane, as you went through it, was all the animals coming into the dream, and the fact that you weren't only rats and the black bear, but the one, the animal that you were really scared of was the bees, even though they were behind glass, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, so they actually couldn't touch you. But all the earlier animals, where most of us will be, oh God, rats, and you've kind of got or at least the farmers, the neighbour farmers at the time, they're calm. They're okay. They even want to keep one of these beautiful rats. The black bear doesn't bother you, and it just comes down to the bees. And even though they're behind glass, that's what frightens you. So what you've got going there, I sense, is a feeling of there's something that everyone and everything and every animal in a dream represents something about the self. So there's something rat-like that you're ready to look at. But kind of going into it thinking, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to feel calm. I'm going to go in and discover what this rat-like venomous thing is in my life. I'm ready to explore this now. And yet, as it comes more to light as to what it actually is, it gets closer to home. In fact, at the end, it's in the headboard, right behind your head. You're in bed, and right behind your head, behind this curtain, it's almost like saying this is either in your head, in your mind, or because it's associated with a bed, maybe your unconscious sleeping mind or your dreams, gets you very close to what it actually is. And it's this hive of bees. So it's like, that's the point where you're really scared, because I was ready to go and sort of find out what this venomous thing in my life was, but now I've found out what it is, and it's represented by this bees. I'm not so sure I really want to go there. So that's kind of like a beginning. One of the things that I'm obviously going to ask you questions, Jane, but I'm just excited to point out a few things that I noticed first. So one of the things that jumps out to me about the bees is they can be a play on word for being, not as opposed to doing and being. And the reason I mention that is because at the end of your dream, it's like, no, I'm going to stop doing all these things, like fixing people, like trying to fix chaos, like being blamed for things that I've done. I want to go back to a sense of calm, even though it's boring, a sense of being. And maybe because you've got your mindfulness teacher there towards the end, planting seeds of something new, maybe there's a sense of that too, that maybe this dream is about exploring, particularly because you go back to a child age, about 7, you go back to the essence or the feel of college life. You go back quite a few times in the dream. There's a sense there that I completely lost track with where I was going with that. Going back to go forward. So there's a sense that you're reviewing all the doing, fixing things for other people kind of area of your life. And the more you fix things for other people or for yourself, actually the more chaotic it seems to get. It doesn't seem to go anywhere. You know, am I blaming myself for all this fixing I've tried to do? I'm now ready for mindfulness, for being, for planting seeds, for being in a bigger space within myself. I'm just slightly frightened of it, as I'm frightened of the bees, because it might be a bit boring. How are we going so far?
Good, very good.
One of the things I wanted to ask you was about that painting, you know, and you said it's a very popular painting where you are, the painting of the 1930s couple standing outside their farm, looking very calm. Yeah. Can you remember when you first saw that painting or what you associate it with?
I think it used to be on the cover of or it was like a magazine I think I saw when I was a kid. I know it was associated with some kind of magazine, but I don't remember. I looked up the painting. It's called American Gothic. But I think the first time I would have seen it, you know, there's a lot of caricatures of it.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Because really they are so boring. But, you know, okay, here comes the word boring. But the farmer and, you know, and they always call it the farmer and his wife, too. So, of course, it's very dated as far as the roles.
Yes.
I mean, of course, she's probably a farmer, too.
But not labeled as such.
No. And actually, I in my own personal life, I've taken a very traditional role where I'm kind of like a wife and a mother, and I didn't have a career, and so in that way, now that I say it out loud, the wife. I'm kind of like in that role, and it's been very boring.
Was it chaotic when the kids were small? But now it's become boring.
Well, no, there's some continued chaos.
Yeah. So so there is that sense, and I like the way that you've got that down to the traditional role of the wife, but you also mentioned the caricature there. So that sense of caricatures may be something that you're exploring at the moment. Wanting to be individual and unique and make an individual and unique contribution while questioning yourself, am I living a caricature? I'm sure that you're not, but our unconscious mind is beautiful to explore. Am I living the caricature of the wife or the empty nest? Why do I say empty nest? Because we've got the nest with the rats at the beginning there, which was up here. I'm just going back to my notes. So they were going to, where did the nest come into it? Just reading. Yeah,
actually, I thought about that. Both of the empty nest is actually happening right now for me.
Right. Okay. So
in my real life.
In real life, it was the nest that you referred to in the rat episode of the dream, wasn't it? They wanted to dig up the nest.
I said that the rats were coming out of a hole in the ground, as if
Oh no,
I kind of called it a rat nest.
Yes,
like
you did.
It was, yeah.
I've got it written down here. They wanted to keep one of the rats, but get rid of the nest.
Yes, exactly. They were they were attempting to kind of kill the rats, I think, but it was in a very calm fashion, in a very caricature, calm fashion.
Keep
but
calm.
For some reason, they wanted to keep one of the rats, and I just thought, that's so odd.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the concepts of, I've got a couple of things from what you said there. One of the concepts of getting rid of the nest is because you are actually going through the empty nest happening thing right now. It's not wanting to get rid of the kids, of course, but it's that thing of getting rid of the structure of the nest. Am I now moving on to a different phase of life where the things that constituted the nest, I don't need those in my life anymore? There's that aspect. And then the other thing that strikes me is that you beautifully described the rats coming up to the top as like ravioli rising up to the surface and bubbling up, and you said you boiled that down, excuse my pun, you boiled that down to a roiling boil. And I'm thinking that roiling boil is quite a contrast to calm if we look at those in emotional terms.
Right.
Yeah. So often right up somewhere near the front of the dream will be one of the key issues. So, my sense is that one of the key emotional issues that you're trying to work through is that sense of, well, there's calm on one end, but maybe that's boring. And on the other hand, there's this roiling boil to get out, to change the nest, to do something, and or maybe this is the release of the roiling boil of that's a natural part of any parenting. There's all the good stuff, and then there's all the tough stuff, and there's the keeping the roiling boil, anger or opinions or thoughts or feelings low, so that you can be calm and do the right thing with your kids and bring them up in the way that you would like to bring them up. And so this empty nesting phase can also be a time to go, right, if I'm going into a new phase of life, I've also got to dig up and look at all the things that I tried to press down because that felt the right thing to do during parenting. And I sense, Jane, that a lot of this dream is about that. What do you think?
Probably, yeah.
Talk to me about ravioli, why you particularly picked ravioli. Is it something you cook?
Just because I didn't want to say pasta, because ravioli, to me, when it's stuffed with something, it's done when it comes to the top.
Okay, that's good.
It's ready to take out.
So you know that at some sense it's ready for you to go through this phase of this period as you empty nest of digging down and looking at the rats and bears and bees and all the emotional underlying stuff and going back to the past and sorting it out. And there's also, because dreams often have many, many concurrent levels which are all true at the same time, I guess there's also a sense within the word ravioli, there might be unraveling. Unraveling as well, yes. That sense. If we go right to the top of the dream, obviously won't have the time to look at every single symbol, but I always do like to nail in the top, because the top of the dream often opens the theme, and I just want to make sure that we're spot on here. You've got Stephanie and Mark, who are in real life neighbours, but how would you summarise Stephanie and Mark's kind of personality or approach to life?
And should I think of them as a couple, because it felt like they were?
Yes.
Or should I think of them individually?
As a couple first, and then as Mark, because Mark was the only one that was really mentioned after that, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. As a couple, they are very friendly. They travel a lot. And they work at home.
And Mark?
And he is very tall. He recently hurt his ankle. but he's very, I'm trying to think of the word. He's a real gentleman.
Yeah. So he took a gentlemanly kind of approach to the rats, actually, didn't he? Then.
Yes. He's like a gentleman farmer, which I think there's a term. I don't know what it means, but I've heard it.
I think it usually means like landed gentry, like very well off, very wealthy. You get the other people to do the actual digging, and you do the gentlemanly part of directing. But it's your dream, and it's what your unconscious mind thinks gentlemanly farmer means. He's recently turned his ankle, so he's unable to do the kinds of things that he would normally do.
Yes, exactly. And he does, yes.
So in a sense, one of the reasons why he may be featuring in the beginning of the dream is because you've also reached an ankle we turn on, and we usually do in an ankle when we turn on it, and you've reached a potential turning point in your life, haven't you?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So there may be some sense of, and also I guess because they usually travel a lot, I'm guessing because we're recording this in the ongoing pandemic, that they're probably not traveling as much as they used to. No, so there's turning points. No, turning points all round for them, represented in the dream as well, in life and in the dream. So we have this kind of fixed, I think, Jane. The dream, the theme of the dream is opening as I, Jane, have a turning point in my life, and it's a time to really dig up. The nest that I've created for the kids, not only the physical nest, but the emotional nest and the stuff that I've held down, and examine all of this and decide what I want moving forward in my life from here. And I'm not sure how I feel about the rats, but I'm kind of calm, and I'm not sure how I feel about the black bear, but I'm kind of calm. But when it actually gets really close, you go from the outside animals to the bees being inside and right close to your head. When it really comes up close and I'm beginning to face this being thing, how to be calm, I'm worried that it's boring. So let's go through and find out some more clues. Are we okay so far?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we've done the traditional wife bit. We know how we feel about being a traditional wife moving forward, no matter how many brownie points you've scored over the last couple of decades. We're ready for a turning point.
3 decades.
3 decades, well done. Oh, interesting that you said 3 decades, and I don't think it's related, but when I read 3 strands of barbed wire in your fence.
And also the mattress topper was turned 3 times.
3 times
and there
it was.
And there were 3 windows broken.
3 windows.
And I have 3 kids.
Well observed, and 3 decades of them, well observed. So you've definitely got that going through there. So in the barbed wire fence, it's that sense of, although as you say, where you live is barbed wire fences, there's a sense in the dream that it's at least open on 3 strands of wire, but you said it was open. Actually, it wasn't a closed fence.
Yeah. It just keeps them in because it's pronged.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, although that is a symbol from your countryside, it may also be a way that you have that you coped with your parenting in all the best possible ways, I'm sure, by also having a bit of a pronged fence around you. You can come this far, I can do that, but there's some things of my life that I just want to keep. Don't get too close.
That's probably true.
Yeah. And it's a survival mechanism, and it's a good one because it preserves some aspects of your life and your well-being, but it can also, I guess in the sense of blame, you may or may not be blaming yourself over, should I have been more open? Is that what you're feeling?
It could go that way. More, yes, more open. More open,
yeah. This is one of the wonderful things about life, is that we actually learn as we go along, and it happens to all of us. Yeah, and I guess some people don't learn, but most people do. And then we look back, and then we think, oh, I should have done that differently, and it can get heavily into blame, where actually it was just life.
I'm very open to that.
Yeah. So there's that sense there of, as you're reviewing the nest and where do I want to go from here, what do you want to bring out of the stuff that you carefully protected behind the barbed wire fence? Where do you want that in your life? So there were the two wild animals. One, you couldn't remember what it was. The black bear was on your side. Walking towards you, you were surprised but not scared. So in a sense, this is meeting another aspect of yourself represented by the black bear. So what would you see as the personality of a black bear?
And also the bear was walking on all four legs, which seemed to be notable. A black bear is native to California. They're not a grizzly bear, so they're more gentle.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like something you have to carry a gun when you're out hiking or something. They eat a lot of berries. They're big. I don't think I've ever seen, well, no, it's funny now that we're thinking, when I was little, my family used to camp in Yosemite, where there were a lot of bear, and they have a family story of a bear was trying to open up a cooler, an ice box, and it was rolling and rolling, and it stopped just inches away from the tent where me as a baby was sleeping.
Ooh. And you don't remember it because you were a baby, obviously. No.
I was like 2 or 3.
Yeah. Wow.
But I don't remember it. I just have always heard the story.
Yeah. So it's a family story about a threat about Jane almost not surviving beyond age 2 or 3.
Being squashed by a black bear.
Almost squashed by a black bear. So and it's also interesting that in that family story it was rolling and rolling, and you talked about the roiling boil of the rats as well. So there's something playing there that takes you right back to, and of course, although you don't consciously remember that event, you were 2 or 3, so you may have some memory of it, and you certainly have memory of the family story, and what you may have an unconscious feeling for is how differently your parents may or may not have felt towards you or parented towards you as a result of that black bear moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know they were scared.
Yeah, and that may have shaped the way that they brought you up from there on. What kind of risks do we take? How do we feel about risks? And that may then have shaped your parenting and feeling going on. A lot of that would have been very unconscious. You particularly noticed the black bear was on all fours. Does that mean it's not threatening?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it's just going about its business.
Just going about its business. So it was essentially gentle. I think that memory of the family story is a key here, but it was essentially gentle. You're meeting a gentle part of yourself that may or may not have played a role in the way that you parent because of what happened to you when you were a child and how your parents responded. So then
I was definitely raised by people, a larger family that had war trauma. They had been in World War II.
Yes. So they were for the safe, calm.
They were very protective. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know that feeling. So yeah. So that really hammers all that home, doesn't it? That was the upbringing you had. It's all about being calm and safe and keeping things small and hiding your feelings. So then you were in anthropology, and I did have to Google anthropology once because I had a client who had a dream about anthropology, so I did have to become educated about it. So you were in the dress store. So essentially, because we've only got an hour full up for this podcast, we're going to have to skip out some bit. But essentially, you were looking for a new dress, and it was a dress that you had been in and tried on in the past, and you were going back to try on again. So there's a sense of here, there's something, a dress is maybe how I want to be seen in life. This is the image I want to see, or this is how I want to feel about myself. I want to feel that if I wear this kind of dress, this is the kind of person that I am. And there's a sense there of, I have tried this before, it's in the past, and I'm now going to try this again. And yet it's all a bit chaotic in here. The light, it's a bit blocked. The light is blocked. It's a bit haphazard. It feels like it's in the midst of a sale, like all this has got to happen really quickly. So anthropology, is it more is it ethical clothing or hippie clothing from memory, something like that?
Yeah, it's kind of like high-end hippie clothing.
Okay, high-end hippie. So have you in the past tried...
And I did go to college at UC Berkeley, which is kind of like a hippie enclave.
Okay, so that makes sense.
From the 1960s, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense of going on then to the college mates kind of, roommates kind of thing. So it's now, post children, empty nest, moving on, do I want to go back to that kind of hippie feeling, but in a high-end kind of way? Or is this going to be totally chaotic? Am I blocking the light? Am I hurrying too much because it's like a sale? I've got to do it right now. I've got to make this change right now, or else I'm going to miss this. So let me just get my pieces of paper ready. This is my other, where we went to next. So you tried it on. I love the way that you left. It didn't actually matter whether you bought it or just left with it. You had no qualms. It's right. Okay, this is a dream. I can do this. I have picked this. I'm trying hippie high end. And so there we go. Suddenly, whoops, back with the college roommates. Do I really want to pick up where I left off before children, or do I want to do this differently? Is the essence of that bit there. So you have Paula, John, and Kerry, who basically, we have to rush through this bit because of our time. I want to spend more time at the end. They basically blame you for stuff being broken and chaotic.
Well, no, they were just the guests.
Oh,
so
okay.
They were very small part. They were just the party guests.
Okay.
And they were not the roommates. Yeah.
So
it was the roommates.
The roommates that were blaming you, the generalized roommate rather than the specific guests. Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of quote unquote roommates.
Yeah. So really the fact that they were quote unquote, Jane, that they felt more like a presence than actual people, to me is a sense that you're identifying that presence closer to yourself than other people. Everyone, including the other people in the dream, represents something about ourselves, but the more they become, no, that's actually more like a presence. It's actually more like, this is a part of myself that I'm beginning to notice and feel more about, and that sense of blame. So that's something for you to, explore in your own time, that sense of how much and we all do this, how much do I blame myself for, what was maybe chaotic in my life, what I could have sorted out earlier. At one stage in talking about this dream, you said, oh, I've got it here. I should have shut the party down. I was asking myself if I should have shut the party down early enough. So it's that sense of, at what point was it when I was a college student? Was it during parenting? Is it now? Have I thought to myself, or maybe blamed myself for not taking a stance earlier, sorting out the chaos earlier, getting on with my new phase of life and what I want? Should I have started that earlier? And although blame itself is a difficult thing, and we don't want to be left with blame. Blame is an avenue that takes us into our deeper feelings and can then allow ourselves to let go, forgive, whatever it is, essentially learn,
Correct.
And move forward more wisely. So going back to the college years for all of that, and of course getting so extremely tired of that, all you want to do is just go to bed.
Right.
We're getting closer and closer to that bed, so closer and closer to myself and my dreams and those bees here. And that is in fact where we get to the bee colony, the shadow box. And I like that although you had to wake up and Google it, you got the shadow box, and back in anthropology, it was the tall trees that were shading and blocking the light. So we got that sense of shading and shadowing again there as well.
Yes.
A sense of
the curtain. And
the curtain, yeah, brilliant. Of course, the curtain, yes, cutting out the light, shading the light. So on the one sense, there could be a feeling of, Jane, I'm looking back on my shadows, my deep unconscious shadows, the stuff that I pushed down there and I didn't want to look at. But also, if light is too bright, we can't see clearly either. Sometimes we need to pull the curtains across or step under the shade of trees in order to be able to see the situation more clearly. To see where the light is and where the shadow is. And I feel that's what you're doing now. Reviewing your life, looking, where can I see the light? Where is the shadow? Stepping into all of that to know it. And particularly because at that dream, you really noticed that although you were indoors, something in you knew that bee colony shadow box was in the exact spot where the rat nest had been. So at that point you had transformed all that wonderful while you slept, this dream. Your wisdom did amazing journey and transformations and insights, and you went from this roiling boil of rat-like stuff that I've really kept down in order to be calm, has now become this sense of possible being that I'm really scared of. An ideal world would be somewhere in between, the roiling, boiling, whatever would come up into our life as a sense of passion and excitement and adventure and risk and fun and whatever else, not the anger, not the hard side of it, but I'm actually alive, look, I'm a passionate being. And I guess a lot of people, not you because you've alluded to doing the mindfulness course, but a lot of people associate being calm with boring, like being spiritual with being boring. Whereas in fact, calm is finding a sense of, as you say, a bit like mindfulness, a space where you can calm the roiling boil and find out what is important to you. Yeah, and that importance might be not boringness, but a calm sense of passion and excitement and being able to go and jump up and down and dance and do amazing high-end hippie things in an informed, mindful kind of way. Where's your thinking on this?
Yes. And the other thing about the bees, I realize, is just the word "bee" to be, or being.
Yes.
And I'd had bee, the word bee or the letter B or something about bees had been recurring in my dreams for a couple weeks before this. And this was the first time I saw the image of the bee. And even though I was scared of it in the dream, when I woke up, I knew that was the most important part of the dream. And you know how you can kind of revisit the image again and again. And every time I've revisited the image, and this might be something we could work with, it's become more intriguing and more beautiful, and I'm less and less scared of it.
That is absolutely wonderful. I love that, and I'd love people listening in to take a special note of that feeling, because it's so true, Jane. The more that you spend in waking life contemplating a dream symbol or working with it with Dream Alchemy, the more you the fear lessens because you're facing it, and the more it begins to speak to you in more positive ways. So that is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I'm very attracted to it now.
Yeah, oh good. You've virtually done the Dream Alchemy already. Have you in that contemplation of the bee, and when you've been awake, the bees, have you had a conversation with them?
No.
That might be something.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
No, that might be something we might mention at the end, really.
Okay.
I flipped to the next bit here in your dream, because I'm having to move through it fast. But I'm jumping over the sharing the bed and the water bed, because I think that's all part of the same thing, going back to college days and how do I feel about that. The three-folded mattress topper, as you say, your three kids, making your bed. But I'm jumping ahead because it's jumping out at me as I realise all the windows are not good anyway. But it seems unrelated, but my brain is trying to say that bees have really big window-like eyes. And when you look at a beehive, it's like lots of hexagonal windows. And something in me, and it just may be picking up on the way that you think of bees and bee colonies, says windows in there.
And then I definitely felt like an echo of the bee pattern of the beehive in the garden that when my mindfulness teacher walked up to the house.
Yes.
There was a garden. We walked outside, and and while we were standing chatting, there was kind of a hexagonal garden.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's that sense maybe there of transforming the, as it turns
some
out,
kind of structure.
yeah, what you thought were broken windows in the dream and went through all the blame thing, but then you actually realised later, hey, they weren't broken. They were actually not that good in the first place, and transforming those into the sense of the windows and the beehive, the sense of being, and the seeds that were planted by the mindfulness teacher and gave you that hexagonal kind of feeling there. Note that hexagonal is 6 is 2 times 3. I'm just putting that, I'm not interpreting that, I'm just putting that in there too. So there's a sense here of, also windows we look through, so they maybe everybody's dream is individual, but maybe your outlook on life or your perspective. And or given your dream the amount of light that may or may not be coming in the windows. But there's that lovely sense there of, I was working on blaming myself for what had been broken about my perspective in the past or whatever. And now I'm realizing they weren't broken, they just weren't good. And I think, ideally we're all leading an amazing life if we can look back and say, my past, maybe that wasn't quite as good as it could have been. And the fact that I can see that now means that I can improve it even more. No matter how brilliant your past was, if you can see it's not quite as good, you've got something to work for to further evolve. And you see that in the sense of being, and in the another wing that you, at that stage in the dream, already see in your house, another wing, another sense of potential there. Your stepsisters come into it partly because one of them has recently died, maybe, and partly also because it's taken you back to your past again.
Yes.
So, it's looking at that. I'm just having a quick scan through what else we had. The dogs coming up the hill, which turned into the beehive, so that was okay. So I would relate, because I'm going to have to tie this up in less than 60 minutes, otherwise our Skype connection's going to disappear, as it sometimes does.
Okay.
For some strange technical reason that it's been doing lately. The dogs barking as Jill comes up the path takes me back to that sense of the barbed wire fence. We were talking about having our own boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so there may be a sense of, oh no, what's this coming? I'm not sure about this calm mindfulness thing really, even though in waking life I've come a long way with it. In my dreaming life there's maybe some unconscious opposition to this. I don't want this in my life because calm is going to be boring. But I think we've probably more or less covered in the dream that calm is not boring.
It's not boring.
No. And being is in a strange way, being is definitely not doing, but being is a very active, that sounds really weird to say it, but it
can be very active, yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
How would you like to be moving forward?
I would like to remember that part of being, that it's very active and it's creative, I think, too, for me. I mean, I've been studying mindfulness now for 4 years, so it's gotten pretty deep inside of me. And but I do. It isn't doing, definitely. It's not something that you can always show.
Yes.
To anyone.
Yeah. And you don't need to show to anyone. It's how you be that then affects other people.
Yeah. It's my way of retraining myself, like you say, to go forward, to kind of break through those old habits and voices and beliefs, and I just would like, get more and more comfortable with just being calm.
Yes.
Boring.
And not boring. Calm, but not boring. And that boring, we should also mention to everyone listening in, we want to make a distinction between being worried that we're being seen as boring by other people, judging ourselves as being boring, and actually being bored. they're different things. Yeah. Yes,
and that would be the older, the me of the past who hasn't kind of reaped the fruits of practicing the mindfulness and the being. So the bees now are showing me that what the old perspective as the child and the college student, and viewing myself in a more viewing myself or my thoughts as boring rather than calm, is the old way, and the new way, which I have learned through mindfulness, is that being calm is an stimulating, active, like a beehive behind glass, kind of fascinating way of being in the world, and it can lead to a lot of creative ideas and excitement about life. And
so it's creative being rather than calm, boring being.
yeah,
with definitely some excitement, and finding that midway between the roiling boil and the calm and boring. It's finding that place where you can be. So I think what would be really lovely, I mean, you've already done a lot of work on the bee symbol by exploring it while you've been awake, and that's come across really well in our exploration here. But I think because it was the key symbol, I think the dream alchemy practice that I would suggest would be a dialogue with the bees. So what you would do is you would imagine yourself back in the dream where you're in the bed and you somebody pulls aside the curtain and you see the bee colony. Only this time, because you have actually already done the work, you probably won't be fearful. But if you are fearful, that's fine too, because you're in control of the dialogue. Yeah. Then remove the glass or any other barrier, but keep the bees sitting in their little hexagonal spots in the beehive. Keep them as a colony, and then have a dialogue with them. So what a dialogue is it's not a carefully thought out, conscious conversation. It's not a conversation that's edited and polished and poetic. It's a stream of consciousness conversation, and it usually is a sentence each. So you speak for a sentence, the bees answer you for a sentence, then you, then them. So it's very quick and very simple, and usually quite plain spoken. And you do it the quicker you write it, the better the result, because the quicker you write it, the more you're in contact with your unconscious mind, which is where the dream largely came from. So what the idea is to find out in conversation what else your unconscious mind can offer you about what this bee colony represents to you. So you start with a question from you, and I'll give you the opening start. Let me think. The opening start might be, "Oh, hello, what a surprise to see you." So it's something as vague as that, but something that at least one of the bees has to answer. And if the conversation seems a bit pedestrian, a bit boring to begin with, don't worry about it, just let it flow, because the point will come where suddenly the conversation gets really interesting. And at the end of it, the bees will teach you something, which is you learning something more about your unconscious mind. So I would be doing that, Jane, as a dream alchemy practice. And I'd also, of course, I can almost, over the ocean, I can almost hear your energy jumping up and down with what all the things and the plans that you've got for yourself, that you know exactly what to do, how to go into creative being in an exciting, definitely not boring, but doesn't matter what other people think of me kind of way, haven't you?
Yes, I think so.
I'm sorry that we didn't get to look at every nook and cranny of your fantastic dream, but given the span and scope of a podcast time, are you happy with what we've done?
Oh, absolutely. We focused on the key parts.
That's great. So, and my final question has to be, are you going to go to Anthropology and buy a dress that kind of suits the new you?
I don't know if they're open.
Oh, of course not. Try online. Online shopping. Anyway, that was
not quite the same.
No, it isn't the same, is it? Well, there will one thing we do know is that in the future, people will be listening back on this podcast as they go through our archives, and they're going, "Yeah, remember that, the days when you couldn't go shopping?" Because this thing will be over at some stage. Jane, thank you for being a wonderful guest on the Dream Show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and Michael.
I'm sure you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did, and I think Jane did too. And, as well as learning from listening to these shows, learning some basic ideas about how to approach and interpret and explore a dream. I think, one of the things that I've always loved about the Dream Show is that little glimpse into someone else's life and how they're living and growing, because it always resonates with our own lives, doesn't it? The bookmarks that we can take forward on our own lives. And, even a dream alchemy practice like that one, talking to the bees, even though you didn't have a dream about a bee colony, if it kind of spoke to you while Jane was talking about it, you go and do a dialogue with a bee colony too. Find out about what your own sense of being wants to say to you. We can learn and borrow from other people's dreams as well. If you're listening to this in real time, you will of course also still be going through the pandemic, depending on where you live, different degrees of lockdown. And if you are listening to this in real time during all of this, then this is a brilliant time to share this podcast, if you've enjoyed it, with other people who are maybe at home a bit more than they often are and looking for things to enrich and uplift them. So please do share. And our next episode 234, is due out on the 10th of September 2020, if you're listening to this in real time. And if you're listening to it way into the future, it'll be one of the many archives you can delve into, because you can listen to every episode of The Dream Show that's ever been at janeteresa.com. And of course, you can always listen to the last 10 or so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's lovely if you can subscribe and give us some star ratings and some comments as well, please. I know I'll be speaking to some of you between now and then as we work together on your dreams. Have a wonderful month, and thank you for listening to yet another episode of The Dream Show. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson.